Well, then after the code.
Likely excuse.
So Michelle, me too.
I've been using that one all year long.
Yeah, if you're gonna use I have kids, I bet most of us could say I have kids.
Adult kids.
I usually, because all these meetings I'm on overtime, I usually leave.
Okay.
Basically.
Enjoy your evening.
I really don't care.
Wouldn't need it.
On board with it.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, we just, we need more.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Of all the people to care, come on. Well, yeah, we didn't patrol the parks every day. Yeah, exactly. Well, we have a lot of stuff going on in the parks.
When they force the new ordinance. That's what I did too.
Potential to create a wildfire. I can look outside, right? See the sun.
That way you have it in the break room with your, get that one.
Yeah, that's great.
No, this is the one at 126.
It did.
Yes.
Is that the one that's, is that the one that's 16,000 hours?
Show was pretty much.
I couldn't believe that when I saw it here.
Again, and then those alerts on.
After the devastation that they had, and now we got another.
Oh, we got a lot of emails today.
Well, one of them, I can't remember, there were 5, but one of them said it was potentially human caused, and the others they were still investigating.
One was lightning. Yep.
I don't remember. I remember lightning years ago when I was a kid.
And actually make it down there. I went to Arkansas.
It's delayed.
Well, I'll tell her when they start.
Suit yourself.
Excuse me? Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. County is. Oh, I'm in the morning early. I didn't go out last night. I woke up tonight.
There's some contact details. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Creswell City Council meeting for August 14, 2023. Would you please join me as we give the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So before we have the public forum tonight, I need to let you know that Councilor Shuck is not able to join us tonight. She sent me a message this afternoon. So while Councilor Shuck is a resident of Creswell, her and her husband own a mobile home somewhere at the Mackenzie River area. She texted me and said, I'm quite rattled because it looks like our mobile home will be demolished by fire any minute now. She said, I just don't know that I can get there tonight. So I said, you'll be excused.
Yeah, sure.
Manager Amber is not here tonight because I got a message from her on Saturday afternoon saying that her mother had died suddenly. So she is in Grants Pass with her family members. So, I'm just going to encourage all of us over the next few days this week, as we know it's going to be very hot. We know there's fires raging all around, that some extra thoughts and prayers for firefighters, first responders, for Councilor Shuck and her family, for Manager Amber and her family, for a lot of vulnerable people in our community. So I just encourage and hope that you'll take some time, and if there's an opportunity that you have to reach out and care for somebody who has a need, that's what community is all about. So, all right, now we have time for public forum, which is a maximum of 30 minutes. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes apiece. And we encourage you to come and speak to us. We don't discuss or make decisions during that time. We can direct our city manager to follow up on comments. Our first speaker tonight is Lori Eichelberger.
Good evening, everyone. So I've already sent 2 emails today. Probably you haven't gotten the second one. One this morning, and then I sent another one at 5 o'clock. The second one was more along the lines of trying to come up with common sense solutions that wouldn't cost very much money or take very long in terms of helping with the continued situation over Garden Lake Park now that the ordinance is being enforced. So my first email, which I know if you read it or not, but had to do with it on Saturday. I was walking my dogs. This is just before noon, and I smelled what smelled like campfire smoke as I was in the area of that second footbridge. And so I ducked through the pathway that doesn't look like you can go through it and drug my dogs behind me. They kind of protested, but we got there and saw this campfire that had not been put out. It's in an area where I have seen that the folks that favor that area cut wood, stack it up, have built multiple campfires there. There's usually food preparation stuff left behind along with other stuff, trash and things. So I did call 911 and then I directed the fireman back into that area. And he was actually really surprised with how what it looked like back there. He hadn't actually gone in on foot to look. And he was able to get it out. But I just wanted to be here tonight to reinforce how important it is to have enforcement in that area, because there is one particular individual who we've nicknamed Pallet Guy, which I wish I actually knew his name. I wouldn't call him that, but that's his spot. And even though he moved all his pallets over to Cinderella Park, he comes to the park almost every day. In fact, I went over there just before I sent the second email to take some pictures of the unauthorized pathways that have been built over there that are hard to get through, but those go to the secret spots where he has camped in the past, and now all those camps are out. But when I was heading back, I actually ran into him and talked with him today. He looked like he was about heat stroked. It was really hot. But he's never been confrontational, but we can't have him or anybody else over there preparing food, especially during these times when we're in high fire season. And my second email, my suggestion was that I took pictures, and there's one trail over there that's wide open. I took pictures of all the other ones that are the sneaky trails they go down. And I'm suggesting that maybe a crew could get over there and just open them all up. Open them all up, and then the general public could frequent those areas and they wouldn't be secret anymore. I think that'd be a quick and easy deterrent, and it'd also be easier for Cliff's crew to get in there, and for the sheriff's department to get in there, and the fire department to get in there if they needed to, if those pathways were wide open instead of having to duck through and step over and be attacked by blackberries. So I just want to encourage you to consider those options and just realize that we've been living with this, folks.
Please wrap it up. That was 3 minutes.
All right, we've been living with these folks as quasi-neighbors. I've been here 10 years and we've been living with these folks. So our experience is remarkably different than people who don't live in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Kirk Garner.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, so I'm also a resident, live in the same neighborhood, and I'm kind of here to support what Lori brought up. One thing she didn't mention, which is the hazard with this particular gentleman, is she went over there and found his fire still going after he had left. I'm also I work for FEMA. I'm a project manager for federal disasters, and I'm heading to Hawaii in about 3 weeks to begin the recovery there. This is a huge, huge issue. All it takes is somebody to leave their campfire, and you have a straight line wind blow through there, and then the forest is on fire, and we potentially caused another disaster. So I understand that it's not a high priority in terms of crimes, but it does have the potential. The only difference between a federal disaster and a small disaster is that it's no difference other than this size. You have your house burned down because somebody started a fire, it's a disaster to you. I used to tell people when I would go to the federal disasters, we're here to help you recover. And that's not true. You can never recover from something like Maui or Hurricane Sandy. Those things they're catastrophic in nature, and for every single person who's involved, it'll affect them for the rest of their lives. I do have one other suggestion that I'd like to present. I think, in terms of Cottage Grove, about twice the population of Creswell, they have 16 police officers. We have 3. Our guys do a great job, but they are so understaffed. I would suggest that we consider hiring 2 more officers, maybe 3. I'd be happy to pay more taxes for that. I think many of us we need more law enforcement so that we can protect our neighborhoods. We can go out and police these folks that want to start fires and then go off and whatever. We need more protection in this community. So I appreciate you considering that. And by the way, I'm not here on behalf of FEMA. Everything I just said is my own personal experience, just letting you know what I see what it looks like. All right, thank you.
So Kurt, just,
Yes, sir.
Creswell has 4 full-time deputies and a full-time sergeant. We have 5 full-time.
Okay, I just looked on the website, it said 3, so.
Just needs updated.
Well, about 10 years ago, we had 2
Okay,
and
all
1
right, well, I
third.
appreciate that. Then we need 2 more.
So we've over doubled.
Okay, but I think we need more. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we move on to the mayor's report. My report is that I was gone last week and got back today from the Oregon Mayor's Association Conference in Hood River. It was a good conference. I took lots of notes, came home with some things to definitely report on to the council. Hate to tell you, but we have to do some more training on a particular subject. I learned about, but it's only a 25-minute video we can all watch together at a work session, amongst other things that I learned. So I will work on summarizing. I'll give you that when we get ready for it. It may not be for a while that we have to do it. But I will summarize my notes and bring you highlights at a future council meeting. All right, and now we move to correspondence. So council members, is there any comments on correspondence? No action is required, but is there any council comments on correspondence? All right, Councilor Clark.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the correspondence that we received from the individuals who actually had a fire that started at their house because of illegal fireworks, the ones that were being set off aerially. And I know that when I read that letter, my heart just went out to them and the experience that they had. I mean, I know that we've been talking a lot about fire damage and fire risk tonight, and that was one that really stood out to me as someone who is just in their home or they actually weren't in their home, that a good neighbor called and said, hey, this is what's going on, and called 911. And so I do hope that we talked in the last work session about potentially expanding the charge for the Public Safety Committee to potentially look at this issue and take a further dive. And so I wanted to just share that I fully support that, if that is something that the mayor would like to do.
Okay. Any additional comments?
Sure.
Yes, Councilor Castilla.
Sure. I just want to say thank you, Mrs. Eichelberger, for your letting us in on the park. And I just say, just keep it up. Thanks for taking up the kind of like a neighborhood watch sort of position. Keep it up. Thank you.
Okay, so with that then we will move on to the administrative report. And Manager Amber is not here tonight, so
Mayor, you missed the consent agenda.
I missed the consent calendar. Totally missed the consent calendar. Thank you, Grace. All right, we move on to the consent calendar. All items in the consent calendar are considered routine and are enacted by a single motion of the council unless there is something in the consent calendar that needs to be pulled for correction purposes. Councilors, is there anything that needs to be pulled from the consent calendar? If not, then I'm entertaining a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented. Councilor Osborne.
I move that we accept the consent calendar accept the minutes as presented.
All right, we have a motion from Councilor Osborne. Is there a second?
No second.
Councilor Castillo seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Now we move on to the administrative report. So, Jim, are you prepared to, I suppose we'll go through this and we'll just see who needs to answer whatever questions. How's that? So first up is the check summary. Council members, do you have any questions for Mr. Piper on the check registry for the last month? Councilor Holt.
I see, looks like about a $5,073 payment to League of Oregon Cities, and I'm curious if you can expand on what that is for.
I believe that's our annual membership fee. Yeah, it's due every fiscal year, at the beginning of the fiscal year. It was paid on July 3rd.
All right, Councilor Osborne.
On page 1, there's Swank Motion Picture Incorporated. Curious what that is.
Yeah, that's the movie licenses for movies in the park. So that's for our 4 feature films that we're doing this summer.
Makes sense. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions. Oh, Councilor Holt.
Just back to the League of Oregon Cities annual payment, do we, is that about the only money that we push out to them every year, or are there other fees and stuff as well?
That's the only one that
That's the only one, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we move to the Lane County Sheriff's calls, and we have Sergeant Spelder with us here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. So if you were to look at our calls for service for the month of July, you'll see that the total calls for service were up slightly from June, which is normal given the heat increase. As it tends to heat up, people are out. People are calling more often, they're recreating more often, they're seeing more things that they normally don't see, and they decide to call those in. And sometimes people decide to come out and take advantage of the warm weather to go commit some nefarious acts. So you'll see that the calls for service are up from the last month. However, our case numbers are not, which is a good thing. That means we're getting more calls for service, but we're not generating incidents that are large enough to produce a case number or take a formal report on. You'll see that there's one Measure 11 crime, which is a historical sex abuse case where the suspect no longer lives in Creswell. My understanding is that suspect is actually somewhere in a different state entirely, and we're still investigating it to see if we can determine if there's a criminal element to that. And we issued 2 speed citations in the month of July. I'd like to comment that Mayor Stram went on a ride along with me for several hours and got to see a little bit of stuff and hopefully learn a thing or two about why we do what we do and how we do it. Other than that, I'm open to any questions.
Well, I just want to tag on, thank you very much for the ride-along, and especially I encourage members of the Public Safety Committee, and maybe you already have, but if you can make an appointment for a ride-along, it's very informative. And all members of the council are encouraged to have a ride-along at some point during your term of service.
I like to talk, so be ready.
It was good, it was very good. Councilor Osborne.
Oh, excuse me. The usual question about the homeless situation in town, has there been any change?
Yes, I'm actually very happy to report on that. One of our longtime Creswell homeless residents, I'm going to leave his name out for his privacy,
Right.
but he has, through the help of Senior and Disabled Services and then a little bit of nudging, he has secured some housing in an adult foster home. He moved in there today. He's no longer in Creswell, so that's a success. We also have 2 other homeless residents that were camping they're still camping, but they're now on somebody's property. So they're, I would say, temporary solution. And then one of our longtime RV campers, it sounds like he's got some prospects on a program that might be able to move him into a permanent home as well. So things are headed the right direction. I'm happy for that. So.
Thank you.
Thank you for whatever work you've done to help encourage people to get into a housing situation. Thank you very much.
Just happy to help.
All right. Councilor Clark.
Sure. So I think one of the things that was brought up tonight that I just wanted to ask you a little bit about is, can you tell me about, or can you tell us about evening patrols that you're doing in Garden Lake Park and what maybe you are finding or discovering?
So I generally work during the day because that's when I'm mostly needed. So the evening patrols are conducted by my swing shift deputies, and they're happening, I would say, on average about once a week. The swing shift deputies are able to make it out there after dark. I've encouraged them with the new events that have unfolded in Garden Lake, especially with the fire that Mrs. Eichelberger, found on Saturday. I've encouraged them to get out there at night more often. I crafted an email to them, spoke to them directly as well, and encouraged them to either, pair up with a main office deputy that's available or find some other way to go patrol the park to try to deter this type of behavior. I'm also worried about the fire in particular, and I've shared with some of you my experiences with fire, and so that's particularly concerning for me, and so it's something that is taken seriously right now. So my plan is to try to get them out there more often than once a week to at least do a walkthrough. It kind of depends on what our call load's like. Swing shift generally is the busier shift, so we'll have to figure that out.
Councilor Smith.
Do you have any suggestions for the city that we can take extra steps to abate the situation? Whether it's community watch or deputize Mrs. Eichelberger, because she needs it, clearly. She's the greatest one out there every day, so might as well put a badge on her.
Now, I would just encourage people to continue to report these things as they happen. Right now, I don't have any suggestions on what will or won't fix this problem. I know that I personally patrol the park quite a bit, and the people aren't there when I'm there, but that's because I'm there during the day. If they're there at night, it doesn't make a difference. I really don't have an answer for that at this point. I think that the best thing that people can do is just be proactive and pay attention and report these things as they do happen. Because if we run into a bunch of incidents where somebody doesn't report it and then it doesn't make it to me, for example, then I might think, oh, well, the problem's starting to solve itself. We can focus our enforcement efforts somewhere else. If it's not solving itself, we need to know so that we can continue. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Councilor Castillo.
So you said that currently do you have them out there maybe once a week during the nighttime? And you sent an email to kind of ramp it up a little bit. Was there a specific number you're shooting for a week, or?
At this point, I'm not shooting for a number. I would say, so swing shift is the busier of the 2 shifts that we staff in Creswell. As most of you know, swing shift runs from 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. And most nights we have 1 deputy on during that time. On Wednesdays, we have our overlap night, and that's when they're generally going out and foot patrolling Garden Lake Park actually walking through the park, looking for these things. So I don't have a goal number to say this is how many times we should do it. However, I want them to patrol it more often, and I've conveyed that to them. I think as the problems continue, we can decide, you know, how often we want to do it. I think putting a hard number on it right now is going to be really difficult to do, because if they go out, say right when it turns dark at 10 o'clock, and then they say, okay, I did my one for the week, or my one for the day, or whatever we decided, then they're not going to want to go back out at midnight and go check the same park. I want to leave that discretion in the hands of my deputies, because they have other calls for service that they need to respond to.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
What about some trail cams that we can Bluetooth to the city and, you know, that could Bluetooth your guys' phone, like, here, show me that right now?
That's an option that's being looked into right now. I've been doing a little research on those and what kind of camera we'd want if we were to put some up. There's a lot of different options, and I have to make sure it's something that's going to be compatible for what we do. If the city were to purchase some and want to put some up, it's different than if we were to want to purchase some and put some up, so it'd be a different procedure. So that is something that is being talked about pretty heavily right now.
Just a question about those, can you get live views on those? Oh,
You
okay.
can get live streaming, go direct to your phone, direct to him,
Nice.
direct to all of us. And you can get secure boxes that are metal boxes, they're in a box, you screw that to the wall or to the tree, they ain't going anywhere. I mean, it might be the next best thing to, you know they're there right now, especially if there's only a handful of parts. I'll go down there, I got no problem with it, I will remove them. But I think that's a good option. If we only need 3 or 4, then maybe we look into the cost for the city, that maybe that's a good way that we come together with the citizens of, hey, this is literally would live stream it or quickly say who the heck it was at what time. And if they're repetitive and we're not catching them, then they prevent or give themselves, you know, you can investigate, you know what times they are going to be there and what they're not doing and what they are doing.
I'm on board with that if that's something that the city decides.
Good.
Yes, yes.
So you are working closely with Manager Amber on all these options?
We've spoken about them in the past. We haven't come to any conclusion on any of them.
So this is something that councilors, if you feel strongly about it, I would encourage you to email Manager Amber, include Alonzo and I. We have regular meetings with her, and Michelle is the one who gives the direction to our deputies as to different nuances of their law enforcement. But I would encourage you to, shoot off an email encouraging that. And we don't have a work session this month, but we will be meeting with Michelle and continuing to talk with Sergeant Spelters about options. I think one of them was brought up was clearing out some of the brush, but again, that would be a directive that Manager Amber would need to give to staff members. But there are options, so communicate with our city manager, Stacy.
Can we request that this go into our next work session? I think this is a conversation we should all have.
Well, yes, we definitely can.
Okay.
Again, that won't be held till the middle of September.
Mhm.
But I know that Manager Amber, she will be back sometime this week, although I'm going to encourage her to take whatever time she needs. I don't know when the service will be for her mom, and she needs to make sure she's got time for that. But I know that she communicates well with you, and that we can communicate directly with her. And she's pretty quick to respond when she knows there's a situation, and counselors are saying, hey, let's be aware of that. So, but yes, Councilor Holt, if you send an email to myself, to Michelle, to both of us, say, hey, can we put this on the agenda for a future work session, then we will do that.
We don't really need her approval though, right? We just need our own approval to put it on the next agenda.
Well, Michelle and I figure out when.
I see.
We honor requests
That's
from
not-
council members.
Okay,
We
all
just,
right.
it's up to us to figure out when, because we have to look at,
I understand.
both the immediacy of the need and also what we already have on the docket.
Okay.
So, okay, any other questions for,
One more quick one.
yes?
Have you done this before? Do you see any legal issue with doing this? With putting up possible trail cams, recording people, as long as we have signs up that say, hey, it might be video surveillance? I mean,
So my understanding under the ORS is as long as somebody is aware that they could be being caught on video. That
If we have signs up, say, hey, there's possible video surveillance, that's good enough, we're covered?
That is,
In your
that is my-
opinion,
that is my
not
understanding
aware.
on public grounds.
Okay.
My understanding of the ORS of public recording is that, there are certain exceptions, like I can be recorded at any time if I'm working. But with regards to making the public aware, a sign is sufficient is my understanding. That may be a question for the attorney. But that's my understanding.
So Cliff could correct me on this, haven't we had cameras up at various times in Holt Park?
They're up 24/7.
In Holt Park. So we already have a precedent for putting cameras up in our public parks. So I would think it would be a matter of a conversation between our manager, Sergeant Spelder, involve Cliff, I'm sure, and the allocation of funds, and it could happen quickly. Okay,
I do have one backseat.
all right.
One more thing to add. We did upgrade the speed signs. People may have noticed that they weren't functional for a little while. It was because there was a battery compatibility issue, and the batteries that we originally had were no longer supported. So we had to get some new batteries, and so the speed signs, the 2 speed signs that are placed around the city, have been upgraded and fitted with the new equipment. So you'll see those are now working great, and we are hoping that they will be great for as long as we have them. So.
Very good. All right, thank you very much. So we move on to the city attorney's report. You have it before you. If you have any questions, Jim might be able to answer them. Shelley might. Are there any questions about, okay, Councilor Holt.
I do have a question. I'm curious to know how Mark plays into this. Like, I thought Ross was our city attorney, but I'm seeing Mark is working with us as well.
Well, I know that Ross was on vacation.
Oh, that makes sense. And then I would like to know more about the work on council rules. Is that something that we can talk about in a work session?
We can talk about it in a work session, of course.
Okay.
You want that on for
Sure.
September?
I'll
I
send an
can
email.
give you a brief overview.
You could.
There was a question about something that occurred several months ago during a council meeting. And so the question was referred to Ross, who was away, and so it went to Mark to give an interpretation on the council rules and whether I, as mayor, had followed the council rules correctly or not.
Okay.
And fortunately, the answer came back, yes, you did. But I needed some clarification on what my role was, and had I followed it, or did I need to do something more?
I'm satisfied.
So
That's all I wanted to know.
that's
It's
what it
like,
was.
I thought I wanted to know if it was something that might interest all of us, but it sounds like not. So.
It would interest you if I violated the rules, which I needed to find out how. So he said, yes, you did just fine. Any other questions about the attorney's report? All right, so code report. Chelsea's not here. I suppose if there's any questions, I don't know if Jim can answer them, or I don't know if anybody can answer them. So let's move past code reports. If you have any questions about the code, I would encourage you to send those to Manager Amber and CC Chelsea for an answer. How's that? All right, past the code report to the building permit, and I imagine Curtis could answer those questions. No? Would that be Angela? Angela's not here. If you have any questions about building, please send an email to Manager Amber and CC Angela, and we'll get an answer for that. All right, we move on to council action items. And we have several public hearings tonight. On several of these items, I will be referring to staff members who are here since Manager Amber is not with us. The first is to adopt the amended street tree code. This is ordinance number 558, amending the Creswell Development Code related to street tree planting, replacement, maintenance, and removal. So Curtis, would you like to come first, give a report, and then we do have a public hearing on this item.
Is this on? Yeah. So as you may recall, a few months ago, the Parks and Tree Board asked me to look at the development code and make sure that they had an option to provide a recommendation for when a street tree is removed, replaced, or maintained, or replanted. And the Parks and Tree Board, they worked pretty hard to make a street tree list, and a tree that made it onto this list made it because the roots are inclined to grow directly down so they don't uproot the sidewalk and damage the road. And a lot of the trees were chosen because the foliage, I think, was limited, so it didn't cause slippage on the sidewalk or too much debris in our stormwater system. And so based on that, they became tree experts, well, beyond what they already were. And so in the development code, I took a look and I uncovered that there was a section on tree removal in the development code, and there was also a tree removal and planting section in the municipal code. Well, in the development code, it followed a type 1 or type 2 process. So a type 1 process is an $80 application that's reviewed by me, and a type 2 process is a $200 application, and that's sent out to notice, and it's a 300-foot notice for all the neighbors to review it. And that seemed a little onerous for a tree removal and replacement application, especially when the municipal code outlined a different list of steps. So in the muni code, it says it's a street tree removal permit, and it's a decision based by the Public Works Director. And given that the municipal code is kind of functions as this kind of ongoing maintenance type of code, whereas the development code is more of this is the time of buildings and development. I think we concluded that municipal code was kind of the better document to rule this. And so the ultimate change in the code was that there's now a line that says the Parks and Tree Board may recommend street tree removal or have an approval with conditions, something along those lines. And then, so I presented this to Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission amended the findings to allow for a trimming with non-mechanical equipment to be just allowed outright. You do not have to go through the Public Works Department to do like trim a little tree that's over your driveway, something like that. So that's what we're envisioning. And then after presenting this code section to you all at the last work session, I amended the enforcement section to go in the municipal code. Mayor Strand caught that was kind of lingering from some of my deletions, and so the enforcement is more or less if you remove a tree without permission, you have to replace it at your expense, and if you don't do it, then the city will replace the tree for you and send you a bill or something like that. Yeah. And then so, yeah, in front of you, there's two ordinances. It's the same package, 558 and 559. And in front of you as well, there's the red line version and clean version of the development code and municipal code. And I know you all have already viewed this once. And let me, any additional questions?
So we hold the questions, excuse me, we hold questions till after the public hearing. We're going to hear from the public, and we will address each ordinance separately. All right? So we will first of all now hold a public hearing, thank you, on item 6A, ordinance 558. So if any members of the public wish to speak on this ordinance, we encourage you to please do so. You need to fill out a form in the back, and then we will hear from members of the public. Looks like we have a question from Lori.
Just procedural, I didn't check that box. Is it possible to check that box in order to be able to make a comment during this public hearing?
Well, let's ask
I've
Grace.
already turned my document in.
Grace,
We'll need a separate form for the
public hearing?
public hearing.
Okay, we'll need a separate form, but right now you can, if any members of the public wish to speak about this, go grab a form, complete it, bring it up to Grace. We're going to give you a minute to do that, okay? Curtis, you can be seated. We'll call you back up after the public hearing when we're ready for all kinds of questions. So we're just going to take a pause for any members of the public to fill out a form and bring it to Grace. Okay, we have one speaker signed up for the public hearing, Lori Eichelberger.
Okay, I didn't know this was gonna be an agenda item. I haven't been paying attention since we spent all that time earlier, on the homeless thing. But, and I haven't read the ordinances, I'm gonna admit that. I just wanna say a little bit about what our experience has been with regards to street trees and front yard trees in our HOA. Because we were, back in the beginning, 2004, subject to this master landscaping plan that was put in place on Emerald Parkway that went from end to end. And it's really clear where our HOA is and where it isn't. So you can
Hold on
see.
just a minute, I don't think your microphone's on.
Oh,
Can you check that, Curtis?
better?
Yeah.
Better.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, so our experience has been that we've been kind of left to our own devices and really was not aware of any kind of tree ordinances or tree preservation. And initially, we were even confused about who owned the darn trees. And then we figured out finally that the trees along Emerald Parkway that are within our boundaries are actually part of our infrastructure, so we're responsible for the upkeep and maintenance. And then I think we've done a pretty good job. We've actually done a lot of, because we've had a lot of storm damage and had some diseased trees that we did remove and then replaced with other trees from recommendations from our arborists. So we may have been doing something we shouldn't have, I don't know. So is there a gray zone in terms of, you know, whether you're in an HOA or not in an HOA, whether you're subject to these ordinances? Because I think we've been doing a pretty good job with the care and feeding of our trees compared to most of the trees in Creswell, honestly. You know, anything south of where we are, from the end of our boundary down to Dairy Queen, looks like hell. Those trees were planted at the exact same time. Most of them are dead or dying. You know, so, and I also have had questions from our residents because initially they were forced to plant, I think by the McDougalls were the developers, they were forced to plant 2 trees in their front yard. Well, we all have tiny little front yards. Well, those trees are all now way too big when you have 2 big leaf maples in your tiny front yard. And so a lot of those have been removed, you know, because they just requested permission and we thought we had the authority to say, okay. And then we just had them replace it with 1 tree because it seemed better. So I'm just saying, we've been trying to do the best we can and we'll continue to try to do the best we can. And we'll try to play by whatever the new ordinance is. But I hope it's not too onerous, you know, in terms of creating issues. Like I personally, we had 3 giant Leland Sanford cypress trees that were planted. Every single corner had those, and I'm on a corner property. Well, they turned into these monster trees, like 60-some feet tall with huge trunks. They started to lean on the house. Their roots started to heave. So we were in immediate danger. And so we had to have those removed, and it cost $4,000. And I have since replanted a different tree in that spot that'll be much more appropriate. And since I've lived on the property, I've probably planted 15 trees on my property. So I hope nobody's gonna get in trouble. We'll try to work with you, that's all I'm gonna say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I would encourage you to, if you have questions, send them off to Manager Amber, CC Curtis, probably Cliff as well, and you'll get your answers. How's that? Okay. All right, any other speakers for the public hearing? If not, then the public hearing will be closed, and we will return to item 6A. This is an ordinance. So first of all, I want to call Curtis back up for any further questions from council members about the ordinance. Councilor Holt.
Just for clarification, it says it all over the place, street trees. So if I want to cut a tree down in my backyard, this doesn't apply to that, is that correct?
Correct.
Counselor Holt.
Just to speak to
Counselor Smith.
the Lori situation, from what hearing her story, just to give her a peace of mind, the only thing I heard that might have been somewhat different from what we have in here is that it's supposed to be tree for a tree. Other than that, everything that you said is all what's in the paperwork already that we were about to agree on, I think. So for peace of mind, I think everything you're doing is perfect and great. And you're already doing everything you're supposed to do. The only thing I can think of that we talked about was, I think it's a tree for a tree. Other than that, Curtis might be able to answer, but I want to give you peace of mind before we left here. Doing awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Curtis, do you have any response to that?
Just the one thing I didn't touch on tonight was that if it's a hazardous tree removal that presents an immediate danger to your property, you do not need a permit and you can remove it.
Thank you. Councilor Osborne.
The Park and Tree Advisory Committee developed an application, and it's free. You just write out why it needs to be removed. Is it a danger? Immediate danger, of course, is different, but what's going on, and then you submit it, and Cliff may look at it and say, place it with a different tree, whatever. It may end up at the Park and Tree Advisory Committee for us to look at the application and make a decision, a recommendation on your application. It's just the paperwork and tells you what, there's a list of trees, acceptable trees that you can choose from.
I posted it on our website, on our HOA website, because I thought it was a great list.
All right.
Any other questions for Curtis? Okay, Councilor Clark.
I just had a quick question from something that I was remembering from our work session is that, and something you mentioned earlier, that there was either an $80 or a $250 application fee. And so I remember there was conversation earlier about actually just removing those fees entirely to make that. And so I was scrolling through because that's what I remembered, and so I just wanted to ensure that that was something that was changed.
Yeah, so in the development code, it outlined the type 1 or type 2 application, which has the $80 and $200 fee associated with it. And this amendment, this change, directs people towards a street tree removal permit, which is a free application. So the idea to make it less onerous.
Okay, no other questions. Thank you, Curtis. As this is an ordinance, we walked through this a while back, process of ordinance. So it required that it be read in full by title, which I will now do. Title is Ordinance 558, amending the Creswell Development Code related to street tree planting, replacement, maintenance, and removal. Now the question is there any counselor who wishes that this ordinance be read in full? Counselor Holt.
I don't wish that it be read in full, but can you clarify what ordinance number it is?
Number 558.
62.
There were two back to back.
Thank you.
Looks like that.
No, that is on the wrong page, thank you.
Okay. All right, so if no counselor wishes to be read in full, then we will proceed with discussion of the item, and then we will move to a vote. If it is passed unanimously tonight, it goes into effect. If not, then it will come back for a second vote at the September council meeting. So, council members, discussion of this ordinance. No, well, I do want to say, Curtis and Councilor Osborne, the tree committee and Curtis have done a lot of work on this. And thank you for finding the discrepancy between the municipal code and the development code and helping us to iron that out. So thank you for all the work you put into it. Councilor Clark.
I wanted to just reiterate actually exactly what you just said. I think the other piece that I wanted to share as well is that I really appreciate the intention to make this an easier process for everyone to be able to follow. And so I appreciate the removal of the application fees, right, and just clarifying that. So I just thank everyone.
Okay, then I'm entertaining a motion on item 6A. Councillor Osborne.
I move that the City Council adopt ordinance 558, amending the Creswell Development Code related to street tree planting, replacement, maintenance, and removal.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councillor Smith seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Councillor Clark.
Not a discussion, just a question. If it's an ordinance, does it need to be read twice?
No.
Great.
That's where we went through this a while back. It needs to be read once in title, and then if any councillor requests that the ordinance be read in full, then we do so. That request was not made, so now we move to the vote. If it's voted unanimously, it passes. All right. All right, council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. The ordinance passes unanimously. Will go into effect. We move to ordinance number 559. This is amending the Creswell Municipal Code related to street tree planting, replacement, maintenance, and removal. So, Curtis, we'll call you back up and see if you have anything additional you'd like to add in your report.
Nothing additional.
Okay, then we will move to the public hearing. The City Council will hold you may be seated. City Council will hold a public hearing on ordinance 559. We wish to hear from anyone present who would like to speak to this ordinance. Please fill out a form, bring it forward to Grace. We'll give a pause if anyone wishes to speak to this item. If not, then we will hold the public meeting open for one meeting. Public hearing is now open. Public hearing is now closed. Curtis, if you'll come back up again. Council members, do you have any questions for Curtis about ordinance 559? If no questions, thank you, Curtis.
Thank you.
Council, discussion of the item? Any discussion items that you have? All right, so I will read it by title in full. Amending ordinance 559 is amending the Creswell Municipal Code related to street tree planting, replacement, maintenance, and removal. Do any councilors request that the ordinance be read in full? All right, if not, then I'm entertaining a motion on ordinance 559. Councilor Smith.
I move that the City Council adopt ordinance 559, amending the Creswell Municipal Code related to street tree planting, replacement, maintenance, and removal.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councilor Osborne seconds the motion. Any further discussion? If not, council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We move to 6B, awarding the contract for airport wastewater system. And Jim or Cliff, which one of you would like to come give the report on this? Thank you, Jim. And both your names down here.
Thank you, Mayor, City Councilors. Yeah, I remember this fondly. We worked with Brandon Lamp at Aqua Resources Design and Consulting to go through the request for bids, invitation for bids, ITB. We had 3 bidders come in, and the lowest bidder was Northwest Community Builders. These are the contractors that will put in the wastewater facility at the airport. I understand that Manager Amberg wished to wait another month just to see if the East Side wastewater provider, Emerald Valley Wastewater, could connect us to their system. And to my knowledge, we haven't heard anything back on that. I don't know if you've heard anything differently.
Okay, so that was why we pushed it back another month, to give some time to see if we'd hear something back.
Yeah, they had expressed some interest initially, but given the opportunity, they can't. Apparently, they cannot get service to us. They haven't even mentioned that they would be able to at this point. The funding for this has to be committed soon and expended before the grant runs out. The grant will fully pay for the system and provide wastewater to the airport, which is something that's been needed for a very long time.
All right, councilors, questions for Mr. Piper? Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, so now we enter into discussion. Council members? If no discussion, then I'm entertaining a motion on item 6B. Councilor Castilla.
I move that the city council approve the city manager enter into a contract with Northwest Community Builders for the city of Creswell Hobbyfield wastewater project in the amount of $489,080.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councilor Smith seconds the motion. Any further discussion? The one comment I want to make is, and Shelley and Cliff know this, 10 years ago we were talking about this. Maybe, I'm sure more than 10 years ago. 10 years ago is when I first became aware of it. We've talked about wastewater out there for a long time. So to me, this is a huge vote for the council. So with that, council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Yay! Thank you for all the work that you've been doing for lots of years and everyone else to get us to this place. All right, item 6C, which has to do with accepting the core grant. Grant acceptance. Manager Humble.
Good evening, council. Before you today, I tried to shorten up our paperwork. And on this agenda site, item summary we're asking your approval to allow Manager Amberg to sign the 2 grants that we received. One is it's Core 2023-77S 00047 for the EOC Communication Systems, which is the ham base station and satellite phones for the continued buildup of the EOC on the airport. And that is a $25,000 grant. The airport / emergency operations line item is responsible for 10% or $2,500. And then the second grant is Core 2023-77S 00051, which is for airport security improvements. $25,000 grant. The airport will be responsible for 10% or $2,500, and that would place security cameras around the airport. And I'll answer any questions you have.
I don't so much have a question, but it's just interesting how much security cameras have come up tonight in our discussion. We already do have them at one park, we've talked about a second park. We are putting them in at the airport. So that's just a comment, it's interesting.
Crime is on the rise.
Okay, any further questions for Manager Humble? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, council discussion of this item. Councilor Clark.
I just wanted to say how impressed I am with the amount of grant opportunities that Manager Humble has pursued during her time and has been successful in, and I think that that's a direct reflection on the work that she does and the leadership that she gives out at the airport. I also think that there's a direct reflection on improvements to our city that we've been able to make, and I think that that's really critical. And so I just wanted to thank and note that that there is a lot of grant money that has come in to the airport and improvement of the airport over the years.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'm entertaining a motion on item 6C. Councilor Smith.
I move that the city council authorize city manager Michelle Amber to complete the necessary grant paperwork to accept the Core 2023 77S-00047 EOC Communication System Improvements and Core 2023-77S-00051 Airport Security Improvements.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Castilla. All right, any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item 6D, seeking council approval to authorize city manager to accept and sign the 2023 core grant when awarded to complete the North Taxi Lanes Improvements Phase 2 construction of second taxi lane. Manager
Council.
Humble.
This is the last grant that I've applied for, which will complete the taxi lane infrastructure that we plan to place in the North Taxi Lane project area. We have 5 grants for this, 5 or 6 grants. We have 3 core grants and 2 bill grants. So we have 5 grants that will encompass this project. What this will do, it paves the way to be able to continue to use the bill money, which is bipartisan infrastructure law, to build and construct a taxi or T-hanger so that we can have additional revenue at the airport. So the core grant matches the bill money and the bill money matches the core grant. So of this project, the city will be not responsible for any funding.
Okay, questions for Manager Humble? All right, thank you very much. All right, council discussion. Councilor Clark.
I'm just going to reiterate what I shared earlier, is that I think that this is incredible and just an incredible gift for the city, and for. As I drive north and south, as I go to work, come back to work, I often reflect on the number of helicopters that I'm seeing right now that are sitting at the airport and serving other communities. And I just think improvements to our airport system helps all of us be safer and attend to what we need to. So again, I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier.
Thank you.
I agree with you. I'd just like to comment too, I think you've done awesome at getting so many grants. And, I know it's federal money and it's all of our money, but it's gonna go somewhere, why not us? And to benefit an asset for the city, as well as you have, and you and your team to be able to really almost go dollar for everything it's awesome, it's impressive, and I thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any further council discussion? If not, I'm entertaining a motion on item 6D. Councilor Castilla.
I move that the city council authorize city manager Michelle Amber to complete the 2023 core grant, Core-2023-77S-00055 grant paperwork associated with the funding and completion of the north taxi lanes improvements, Phase 2 construction, installation of taxi lane.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Smith. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We move to item 6E, budget adjustments. Mr. Piper.
Thank you, Mayor, City Councilors. The item we have before you is a resolution to amend the fiscal year 2023-24 budget and appropriate expenditures within the general fund and the airport fund. The city of Creswell appropriated almost approximately $4 million in fiscal year 22-23 for the runway overlay project. It was supposed to be concluded in the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. However, due to some circumstances beyond our control, some of that being supply chain issues, Shelley could speak in detail on this. This is her world day in and day out. That project didn't get completed, and so we still have about $602,000 in unappropriated capital outlay to complete that project, and it will be covered with the grant funds to pay for that. So there is no need to use operating contingency to do that. It'll be supported by the revenue from the grant funds. Also, in the same vein, we got 2 new grants thanks to Curtis, our city planner. One from Lane County Public Health Department to put up no smoking signs in public spaces in our parks. Also with schools as well, I believe there's some signs going to the schools. Also, he got a planning grant from the Department of Land and Conservation and Development to review barriers for residential development in Creswell. Again, these expenditures will be covered with grant funds and we won't need to dip into our contingencies. The resolution shows you the original appropriations that were made in June for this fiscal year and the proposed change for the funds and the approved revisions should you approve this resolution.
Okay. Questions from the council? Councilor Holt.
Just for clarification, you're saying that the $602,000 is not going to come from like our general fund? It's gonna be covered by the grant?
Yes, so what you appropriate is the expenditures. But what you don't see is the revenues are coming in. The revenues will be the grant funds in the airport fund. So you'll see the FAA AIP grant fund revenues matching the expenditures. Therefore, there's no need to use contingencies.
Okay.
Councilor Castillo.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one question. I think it's a question. The $10,000 grant that was received for the planning development for reviewing of the conservation and development barriers for residential development, how far will that money go, that $10,000?
Curtis, you want to speak to that?
So it's part of a bigger project, and one part of the project is looking at, well, it's all looking at barriers to housing, and one part of that is looking at wetlands and trying to streamline how wetlands are reviewed at the state and federal level. And then another side of it is that most of our residential parcels that are vacant or partially vacant don't have access to adequate infrastructure. And so I've worked with the city engineer to look at parcels around Creswell and provide some sort of estimation as to how much it will cost to extend water, sewer, roads in order to serve those parcels. And then there's one specific group of parcels that's around Highway 99 and Martin Road. It's within our city limits and it's not connected to services, and kind of hypothesizing what a local improvement district might look like, and that's kind of what he's working on right now. So it's kind of The idea is that eventually we'll be ready for a growth boundary expansion, and there will be undoubtedly someone who says, hey, you still have land within your growth boundary, within your city limits. Like, what makes you think you can ask for more land when you aren't serving the land within this boundary? And then we can say, well, it's going to cost us $5 million to serve this land, and if you divide that up by, I don't know, 6 units per acre, something like that, that's pretty standard. That infrastructure cost leads to higher housing costs and has implications. So that's, yeah. I'm excited about the project, so I'm more than answering your question, I hope.
Sure, yes. Well, the 10,000 is probably a small portion of a much bigger number, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say thank you for finding the 10,000. We'll take whatever we can get.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Curtis? Okay, council discussion of item 6E. Seeing no discussion, I'm entertaining a motion on item 6E. Councilor Smith.
I move that the City Council approve Resolution 2023-20, the resolution appropriating expenditures within the General Fund and Airport Fund.
I have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Second from Councilor Clark. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We move to item 6F, adoption of Oregon Paid Family, Medical, and Safety Leave and Safe Leave Policy. And Manager Amber said that Mr. Piper would answer our questions about this one tonight. So Jim, you want to give us a little report on Paid Leave Oregon?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Sure. I'm sure that you've all heard of this program. It's fairly new to us, and we're trying to get through the implementation of it. We've actually started making our regular payments to the Department of Revenue. What this does is just kind of, my understanding is it brings the policy into the manual, in the employee handbook that we have to provide everyone. So it's more of a legal procedure to adopt this policy and bring it into our handbook.
Okay, questions for Jim? Councilor Smith and Councilor.
The $1,240 per quarter, how many employees does that total up?
That's all the employees that we have here at the city.
Yeah, I'm got an actual number, so.
Sure. We have.
Isn't it 18?
It's 18 currently, yes. And then we have some 0.75, and then we have a 0.2 with the judge. So it's kind of a tricky number. We went through the initial meetings on how many employees we have. They want to include the council stipends as well as as an employee count, because it's on the form when we report the Social Security SSI payments.
That was my next question, was to see if the stipends were.
Yeah, it was a popular question at these meetings with other cities, so it sounds like we're not the only city that's had this question and is in this situation. It really does impact us small cities like us where, we have around 20 employees, but when you count the council in it, it puts us in that next tier where the city has to pay the 40% of the 1%.
Okay, and that's, that 1240 is just the city, it's not the employee?
That is just the city's portion.
Portion, yeah, okay.
The employees also are put into the.
Because they're 6% of that 1%.
Councilor Holt.
I'm curious to know how this impacts current paid time off that we afford employees of the city. I'm curious to know if somebody goes out for family leave through Oregon benefits, are they being double paid? Are they being paid by Oregon and by the city? I have a lot of questions about this.
Even a lot of HR managers, I'm sure, as Counselor Smith has a small business, that he also has to deal with this. I would defer to Michelle Amberg on that one. She handles more of the HR legal stuff. It is very complicated. The quick response I got was that the employee gets to choose. That's what I was told. As an employer, we have to let the employee choose which one they want to use.
Because I'm not ready to vote on something that double pays. I'd like to know the answer to that.
So this is employee and employer paid? So
Is the microphone on?
it's employee and employer paid, certain small businesses, or if you're not an independent contractor, you don't have to pay the 0.60% of the 1%. So the city employee is actually gonna have to pay for part of this, and then they get to decide after September 1st when they use it, if a family, falls ill, you have a baby or all like that. So you are paying into it, the employer is also paying into a portion of it. So that is on top of normal benefits given with sick leave and vacation time, and personal time off. You're kind of paying, you're forced to pay for an additional time off, and then the employer has to retain your job. So then you can hire somebody within 30 days, after 30 days, you have to retain their job unless that job literally goes away. So the employer's at a disadvantage here, but the employee is actually paying for almost half, 40% of 1% of your paycheck is going to this fund, whether you use it or not.
Right. What I want to know is that we're not going to have a situation where an employee goes out for 30 days, is paid through this program for that 30 days, but also is paid 30 days of the PTO that they have accumulated.
They cannot.
Okay, that's what I want to know, okay.
It is specific, you go in this program, you kind of have to lean into it with an estimated time, and you have up to, I think, 12 weeks. But you choose that program, you get paid from that program. You cannot get double paid, and your employer is usually working with that program, letting them know that you're not here, you're not you're not getting double paid, you're not taking advantage, you're not using both systems. You're using the system that you're forced to by the government.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. That is correct.
Yes, Manager Humble.
Just to reiterate, it's not a choice that we get to decide whether we accept it or not.
I know.
They told us that we
I'm
have
paying
to
it
do
too.
I know,
Yeah.
but that's, I don't like it. I wish we didn't have to, but I had several conversations with Michelle saying my displeasure, but as a city, we don't have a choice.
No, I totally concur with that. I just don't want to vote on something without knowing all the moving pieces.
I won't vote no too.
So this is a policy drafted by our attorney, and the policy would then go into the city's employee manual, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay, just wanted to clarify the process of what we're doing here. Okay, further questions for Jim? Okay, then, council, time for discussion.
We have to do it, so.
Councilor Smith?
Just for everybody else, my opinion, I'm with Council Holt, Manager Humble back there. I hate it. They're taking our money and basically putting in a savings plan, but we're voting on the city adopting this into the new benefits package, and it's basically logistics, and so I feel like we're not voting on something honestly other than protect the city, that this is in the benefits package, so I just want to make that clear.
Councilor Holt?
Right, to be clear, that from what I'm understanding from this is that we're just making our policy be accurate based on the state law, but this is not providing any more paid time off. It's not costing us, it's more, okay.
Well, technically, I guess it costs the city 60%
Well, I mean,
to 1%, but yeah.
That's true. On top of what we're being forced to pay, exactly.
Okay, additional council discussions? All right, then I'm entertaining a motion on item 6F.
Good conscience.
Councilor Osborne.
I move that the city council adopt the Oregon paid family, medical, and safe leave policy.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilor Clark seconds the motion. Any further discussion? All right, council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes with 5-1 vote with Councilor Holt in opposition.
In opposition of the state program in general, so don't take it personally.
We move to item 6F. This is adopting. This is actually on the back. It says it's 6G, but here it says 6F, so I believe this is 6G. This is adopting a program to correct the problem creating the moratorium. This is the last item on the agenda.
It's still sunny outside too.
And I'm going to have Cliff Blues already up here. So do you want to give us a report on this, and then we will have a public hearing?
I will. Before you tonight is an item adopting a program to correct the problem creating the moratorium. And that,
Is your microphone on?
sorry, no, it's not. Is that better?
Yeah.
That wording is directly out of a memo we got from Ross, our legal attorney. So I'm just going to read you this little blurb. When adopting a moratorium based on a shortage of sewer capacity, the city is also required to adopt a program to correct the problem creating a moratorium within 60 days after the effective date of the moratorium. The adoption of this corrective program requires a public hearing and 14 days written notice to the Department of Land Conservation and Development. The 14-day notice has already went out, and so in addition to the moratorium that you guys adopted, I believe it was last month, this has to be adopted also, and it is a corrective action that we've worked with West Tech, our engineers, to develop. The plan is included. You can see in the packet, it is labeled sewer moratorium milestones, and what it is, it's a matrix that addresses all the work along with dates that the city must complete that will allow us to fully lift the moratorium. And that has to be included to make the moratorium that you guys adopted last month completely legal. And then we have to go back every 6 months and update that and look at the progress we've made on that. So what you're looking at is that matrix that West Tech has put together, and that's a full workload list of all the items that have to be repaired for us to come out from underneath the moratorium.
Okay, so just a question, clarification. So what we're adopting in the packet, this item from West Tech,
Is that item.
it has the milestones on it.
Yes, it's the milestone matrix with each individual work item that has to be completed.
Okay, so with that, we'll have our public hearing, then we will come back to questions for Cliff. So we're going to have a public hearing on adopting a corrective program in regard to the development moratorium. And if any members of the public wish to speak during this public hearing on this item, please fill out a form, bring it to Grace. We'll have just a pause to allow you to do that. If no members wish to speak or we're not sure, we're going to hold the public hearing open for 1 minute. So the public hearing is now open. Public hearing is now closed. So Cliff, if you can come back up and see if we've got some questions for you. Councillor Osborne.
It was my understanding that our sewer hookups were limited to 15. Is that correct?
That's correct, currently. If you look at this matrix, as it goes down through all the list of items to be repaired, it has a list on the far right-hand side on how many connections that we can receive as we knock off some of these items that need done. And these come straight out of our permit from DEQ. So there are some advancements for some more connections, but they're pretty limited, as you can see. They're 5 and 10s. There's not going to be any large developments until we're completely done with the moratorium, and then all the restrictions will be lifted.
So it says February 1st, 2024. If it's completed, we have 5 more. Is that 10 plus 5? Or 15 plus 5?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah, we have 15 with no action,
okay.
and then these are additional.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
So as we look at the list of milestones, do you feel like this is a achievable milestone list?
These are pulled right out of our NPDES permit and our MAO, and they are pretty much written in stone with DEQ, so we're required to meet these, no matter what our feeling is.
Councillor Clark, you have the floor.
Excellent. I was going to say, I have another question not related to this. And so as I was reading further from the memo from our city attorney, he talked about that essentially we can extend the moratorium up to 3 times for 6 months. And so by my math, that's about 1.5 years. And as I look at the list of milestones that we need to achieve, it actually takes us up until 2031 before all restrictions are lifted. And so I guess my question is, in 1.5 years, what do we do?
So that's a good question. I asked that same answer to our attorney. The Oregon rules and statutes don't really give you the amount of time frame that we need to complete these. And so there's several cities that are in this situation right now that have went past that 1.5 years, and they just continue to update their list and try to get it done what they can, and there hasn't been any legal repercussions. So I don't have a good answer, and neither did our legal consultant, other than he knows that they have just continued to extend the work that needs done and do it, and there hasn't been anybody raise any legal concerns with the cities that he knows of.
So I have a question, because I thought I heard that we had 5 years to get all this done. But this looks like we have about 8 years.
So what you have is a compiled list from 2 different permits.
Okay.
An MAO permit and an NPDES permit. And both of those permits have requirements in them, and all the requirements in both permits have to be satisfied before the full moratorium is pulled. So the MAO has, most of those need to be done within 5 years, and that has to do with the collection system. The treatment system is addressing the actual treatment plant, and we have up to 9 years really to get it online. I think it's 7 to get it completed and 9 years to have it up and running. I think that's right, yeah, 29 to have it constructed, and then 2031 to have it all completed and in compliance.
Okay. Well, you've done a ton of work on this. It was about 1 year ago, somewhere in there when you received the letter.
Correct.
And I know this has consumed a lot of your time. I hope you're getting a little more sleep.
Yeah, we are, not that we're in any better shape, but we at least have kind of a streamlined process, know what we have to do. This list, even though it may not be exactly what we wanted to do, there was a lot of negotiation, and this is what DEQ allowed us to come down to. So we met in the middle on quite a few of these, even though it's going to be a huge cost to the city, but we did negotiate a lot with them.
Thank you very much for all your work. Councilor Holt.
Is there at all opportunity for any sort of grants to help us along the way? Is there any expectation of having that opportunity?
I think that's more a question for Jim. I don't think there's a whole lot because of the amount of money that folks would make in this town. I think we're more into low interest loans, but maybe Jim can help us.
Yeah, we just met with the Regional Solutions team of the DQ, and they are taking their BIL funds and they're doing low interest rate loans, so less than 1% to the city. So we're already planning to apply, and we'll come back to it later. Council meeting, hopefully we'll be awarded. We applied for the loan to cover the wastewater update, master plan update that we're required to do. They said that up to $100,000 of that could be forgiven. It is dependent upon your poverty levels in the city, medium household income. They did allow us to carve out the users that are just on this wastewater system.
Which makes a difference with that median income a lot.
So we're hoping to hear back some better results. Whether or not we meet that threshold, that'll give us a little more leeway, a little more grants as opposed to loans. But we're encouraged just to hear that less than 1% loan would be much more cost effective than, say, if we had to go get a 4% loan right now. So
Way to go on getting that carve out.
Oh, yeah.
That's big, yeah.
yeah, and that's been Curtis, so I can't take credit for that. Curtis has been working closely with
Way to go, Curtis.
Curtis left, so you get all the credit. Yeah,
no, it's a team effort every day.
Yeah, no, that's great, that's great.
Okay, any other questions for Cliff or Jim? Okay, thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, council discussion. Seeing no council discussion, I'm entertaining a motion on item 6G. Councilor Smith.
I move that the city council adopt Creswell sewer moratorium milestones, letter from West Tech Engineering as the city's written program to correct the problem creating moratorium.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councilor Osborne seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. That brings us to item 7 and 8. And council members, I encourage you to sign the card over here to the right for Manager Amber, and we'll get that to her. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Well, so, here you
I
go.
answered that, I looked it up.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I had to look at it again tonight and say, yeah, we went through all this, now I just have to be reminded. Oh, yes, now I remember.
Yeah, I looked it up.
All right, very good. Here's for Grace.
I lost my paper.
Last week, and there were some things that I picked up because us or something to think about. So first they had these really special stickers. I actually really like with like and I thought, gosh, we just